All right, our top focus at this hour, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is in Washington in a few hours, in a few moments from now, in fact. He will be meeting US President Donald Trump at the White House. And ahead of the meeting, the Indian Prime Minister is holding crucial bilaterals as well. He met Tesla CEO Elon Musk at the Blair House. It was followed by a meeting with Indian origin entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. A short while ago, Prime Minister Modi also met with NSA Michael Waltz. The discussions touched upon ways to further deepen the India-US Comprehensive Global Strategic Partnership. Ahead of the meeting, senior Trump admin officials say that ties between India, United States' most critical bilateral relationship of the 21st century. The two nations are moving to signing towards new defense frameworks. Defense procurement by India from the United States. This sets the stage for a crucial diplomatic encounter. The Modi-Trump chemistry, it's been evident through their previous encounters as well that were marked by spectacular joint appearances at massive rallies. The world saw the two leaders amidst cheering crowds at the Howdy Modi event in Houston in 2019. A year later at the Namaste Trump event in India's Ahmedabad, both leaders call each other close friends. Prime Minister Modi will be the fourth leader after Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Japan's Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba, and Jordan's King Abdullah II to meet Trump in the United States in his second presidential term. This visit underscores the importance the Trump presidency accords to India and vice versa. India has moved strategically to smooth out potential friction points. New Delhi has demonstrated goodwill by lowering certain tariffs. These preemptive measures aim to forestall potential demands from Trump, who has not hesitated to weaponize tariffs against allies and adversaries alike. This visit comes against the backdrop of deportation of illegal Indian immigrants. Earlier today, a second flight with Indians deported from the United States landed in Amritsar. Earlier in February, when the first flight from the US landed, the manner in which they were handcuffed and bundled on a military jet, that wasn't received well in India. The Modi government had to face some tough questions on the issue as well. At the heels of the current visit, US will be deporting a second batch of illegal immigrants back to India. During this Modi-Trump meeting, the discussions will also center on defense and security cooperation. A potential meeting with Tesla chief Elon Musk adds another dimension to Prime Minister Modi's visit as India eyes expansion in its electric vehicle sector. The billionaire has toyed with the idea of launching a more affordable model of the all-electric Tesla car in India. Now, Prime Minister Modi's schedule includes meetings with Trump's cabinet members that I had mentioned earlier, US business leaders, the Indian American community. He has already held a meeting with the newly appointed Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. Behind the diplomatic warmth, the stakes are high. Trump is expected to reciprocate with a visit to India for the next Quad meeting. Both leaders appear poised to maintain their strategic partnership despite potential challenges. All right. Joining us live on the broadcast is our correspondent Susan Tehrani, joining us from New York. We also have with us Mr. Derek Grossman, Senior Defense Analyst, RAND Corporation, joining us live on the broadcast from California. Thank you both for joining us. Susan, let me come to you first. I want to, of course, begin by asking you about the mood on ground, the preparations that have gone behind this meeting. What can you tell us, Susan?
Yes, a very important meeting, of course, for the White House, considering the fact that Prime Minister Modi is one of a handful of leaders to meet with President Trump and be invited to the White House by President Trump during the first month of his presidency, about 3 weeks in. It really attaches the importance of the Indo-Pacific region, bilateral ties between the two countries and their strategic interests in countering China. Of course, preparations have been underway for some time for this meeting. And what we're hearing is we will be seeing a press conference with the two leaders in a few hours from now after their bilateral meeting. So that's going to be very interesting, and reporters will have an opportunity to pose their questions to the two leaders. However, the things that most Americans are looking at right now is not only how perhaps culturally comfortable Prime Minister Modi is with the new Trump administration. You have Kash Patel, who's likely going to be the head of the FBI very soon. You have J.D. Vance's wife, who's of Indian origin. He just met with Vivek Ramaswamy, who is in Trump's orbit, and of course Tulsi Gabbard as well. But I do want to say that there are issues like tariffs, trade, and immigration that are going to be key points that we're hoping to get more information on, so to say.
Absolutely, Susan. Mr. Grossman, if I could just come to you now again, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. I want to begin by asking you, what are you expecting from this meet between the Indian Prime Minister and Donald Trump? We know that Prime Minister Modi has met other senior dignitaries from the Trump 2.0 administration. What are your expectations?
Sorry about that. Thanks for having me. Yeah, so I think that the two leaders are going to try to pick up where they left off during the first Trump administration, which was to improve the U.S.-India relationship basically on all fronts. And what we're seeing coming out of the Trump administration is a desire to have a closer defense partnership with India. And I think India will welcome that to some extent. Of course, India has a non-aligned position or a multi-aligned position on its foreign and security policy. And so it still maintains, of course, very close security ties with Russia and with other countries. And so the U.S., I think, wants to be sort of like the priority country security partner for India. And I'm not so sure that that's necessarily something that Modi is going to want to champion in this particular meeting. But I do think that the two sides are driving toward more of a common purpose on the defense and security side. And it's also important to point out that Modi has certain things that he wants to, quote unquote, gift to Trump, as we're seeing in some of the news reporting, such as lowering tariffs unilaterally on certain U.S. imports to India, also doing more on energy with the United States, and maybe buying, jet engines and other combat vehicles from the United States. So they're going to try to paper over the differences when it comes to the tariffs and the unequal trade issues that Trump has talked about during the campaign and as president.
Right, absolutely. Now, of course, as Susan mentioned, there are some sticking points, trade and tariffs. Let's also talk about China. What are you expecting from the meeting with, we know that Prime Minister has met with other senior dignitaries. But of course, when it comes to China, how do you see the India-US relationship evolving in that regard?
I think that the U.S. and India have shown, especially during the 2020, Chinese encroachment into the Galwan Valley, the U.S. and India have shown that they are working very closely on dealing with China. The Trump administration at the time shared intelligence with the Indian side, and Trump himself had kind of floated the idea of the U.S. doing more to support India, but India said it didn't need additional support, right? So I think the two are working very closely on China. Also, it's important to point out that India is part of the Quad, which is the U.S., India, Australia, Japan security dialogue. They don't mention China in their joint statements per se, but it's clear that they're working on China together. And so, there's, and of course, India has also signed off on the U.S.'s Indo-Pacific strategy, which is designed to counter China within the region and globally. And so I think there's a lot of similarities there. The only thing is that, you have to remember that in October, right before the U.S. presidential election, India and China came to an agreement on the last two points along their border in which, China still maintained a military presence. And I think that was very much designed by the Chinese to try to smooth over the relationship with India because, they anticipated if Trump were to win, then Trump's going to have an even better, or the United States under Trump is going to have an even better relationship with India. So they were trying to, mitigate the impact, geostrategic impact of that possibility.
All right. Well, Mr. Grossman, thank you so much for joining us on the broadcast. Of course, how things pan out, that's something we'll keep a close eye on. Thank you so much for joining us for now. We are now being joined by our Voice of America correspondent, Jessica Stone, joining us live from the White House. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us. Of course, let me begin by asking you what's happening on ground right now. What's the mood like? What can you tell us?
We are at 1:45 local time, just waiting for the arrival of Prime Minister Modi. We've been told that we need to move our cameras in about an hour and a half's time for him to approach. And he'll be coming, of course, through the gate here and right up behind me to the stakeout position where he'll be greeted by President Donald Trump. And we already know from Trump administration officials who've briefed reporters that it will be a warm welcome and that these two leaders, of course, have a close relationship and have had historically very similar political beliefs, particularly along the populist political spectrum. And so far, I have to underscore that I've really been struck by the positive tone that the White House is sending going into these visits. Certainly no ally is spared from Trump's tariffs, and we know that those reciprocal tariffs are going to be or have just been signed in the Oval Office about 45 minutes ago, and they will have an application to all trading partners, literally by going through, according to White House officials, they will go through and start with the largest trade deficits. Well, India doesn't have the largest trade deficits, but it certainly does have a large deficit. And so we expect that things like pharmaceuticals and gems and oil and gas, minerals, things of that nature that are major parts of this trading relationship will be impacted by those tariffs. But having said that, there is a clear path to negotiation. And that's really one thing we keep hearing stressed by Trump administration officials, that for Trump, tariffs may be his favorite word, but they're also a tool to get what he wants. And what he wants, they say, is a fair trading relationship. That is to say, equal. So if you put tariffs on me, I will put tariffs on you. If you drop tariffs on me, I will drop tariffs on you. And we really anticipate that this is going to be the beginning of a negotiation, not in no way the end of the negotiation between these two leaders and many others.
Right, absolutely, Jessica, and I'm glad you mentioned that because that was what I was going to come to next. Of course, there's the issue of trade and tariffs, but if we were to just talk about the circumstances surrounding this visit, of course, there's also the issue of immigration, and we've seen that illegal Indian immigrants were sent back to India as well. How do you think these sort of issues will come up during the discussions?
Well, so far, the Trump administration seems very grateful for the steps that India has taken and the signaling that began before the Trump administration took office of a willingness on the part of New Delhi to take back repatriated illegal Indian immigrants. And they've already taken 2 flights, I believe, one last week and one beginning this week. These are steps that are appreciated by Washington because this is a big agenda focus, as you know, for this White House to crack down on illegal immigration. And illegal Indian immigration makes up a large percentage. Actually, I was really astonished to learn that it's the largest percentage after Latin Americans. It's bigger than Filipino Americans who are coming to this country illegally, which is a very big group as well. And so that crackdown has been welcomed by the Trump administration, and the reciprocity they're getting from New Delhi is very much welcomed here in Washington.
Right. Susan, if I could just come to you now. Same question, Susan. How has this issue and the way it has been, the way the process has been carried out, how do you think that's been received?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that question?
Right, I was talking to Jessica about the illegal immigration issue. We know that there have been 2 batches of Indian immigrants who've been sent back to India. So how has this issue been received, Susan?
Dealing with illegal immigration has been a cornerstone of the Trump administration's policies, not just regarding illegal immigration from India, but other countries as well. And as Jessica noted, the Trump administration has welcomed India's cooperation in this regard. Aside from illegal immigration, we are expected to hear more about the issue of H-1B visas, which is somewhat of a lifeline for Indian origin IT workers here in the United States. And Donald Trump's protectionist policies perhaps has created some sort of anxiety among those who rely on these kind of visas. So it appears that the two leaders will talk about that as well. But the issue of immigration now is also tied to national security. So it'll be very interesting to see how these two issues are going to be talked about together, but also the issue of visas and legal immigration, people-to-people connections and dialogue as well moving forward. I do want to say that we're hearing that some technology-related announcements are also expected today. So we'll have to see, if that, again, is in regards to one of those people-to-people sort of agreements that they're going to have.
Right, Susan, and also just for the benefit of our viewers, if you could just take us through the engagements that are planned for the day.
Yes, of course, Prime Minister Modi is expected to meet Donald Trump. They're going to be meeting at the White House, and then they will meet bilaterally. We are expected to see a press conference with the two leaders where journalists are expected to be able to ask questions from Prime Minister Modi and President Trump as well. And of course, they'll have a dinner as well together later on. This 36-hour visit by the Prime Minister really has been hailed as one of the most important because of India's really strategic partnership with the United States and the Indo-Pacific, one of the most important allies in that region. And President Trump wanted to, of course, welcome Prime Minister Modi during his first weeks in office to cement that relationship. And of course, President Trump will be going back to India as part of the Quad Summit later on this year.
All right. Well, Susan, thank you so much for bringing us the latest for now. Of course, we'll continue to track all developments closely with you there. Thank you so much for now. For latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.